Oh, hey, I'm Joe Mack. Welcome back to the channel. Thought it was gonna get better.
Somehow it got worse. Today, Ashes of Man. It's not like the Phoenix. Face value, it's kind of like the book presented itself in a way where you are going to recover from the events of Kingdom of Death. And I think that, especially the way that the book starts, it does kind of set you up to really believe that things are going to turn around. Things might be okay. And it's not the case. Like we said last time, Kingdoms of Death and Ashes of Man was originally supposed to be one book, but the publisher made Christopher split it into two books due to the cost of paper at the time. Where I feel that Kingdoms of Death stood on its own and possibly even benefited from having being split. And I think Sun Eater as a whole benefited from the split because we get more Sun Eater, and Christopher was forced to include more, which then had the snowball effect of in later books he had to wrap up certain threads that he had started. I think that Ashes of Man may have suffered for it. It's not a bad book. Just like Empire of Silence isn't a bad book. This is still a good book. It is a great book. It is an 8 out of 10 book for those of you who are here for the rating. I think that it does suffer a little bit from some pacing. It suffers a little bit from some Sun Eater style cookie cutter structure. But with that being said, there are some moments in this book that top moments in books previous. Namely, there is a climactic event in this book that I think is better than Demon in White. This deep into the series, it's really hard to talk about these books without spoiling anything. So I want to get some of that generic stuff out of the way for those of you who are looking for just some notes about the book in general, so that I can dive right into my actual real thoughts about what's going on in this book. Like I said, pacing and structure suffer a little bit. I think the exploration of the characters and how they handle the things that have happened in Kingdoms of Death is incredible. We get to see a lot more development with the Emperor and those around him. We get to see Hadrian's character further develop as he spirals out of control, dealing with the trauma of losing.
Ooh, that was close.
Dealing with the trauma from Kingdoms of Death. We get to see Lorien come more into his own, and we get to see Valka be by her partner's side during this time, having experienced trauma herself, but the story being an in-universe work from Hadrian himself. That's where our main focus is. So we see her be an accessory to him and how she helps him get through all this. I think the character work in this book's fantastic. I like the action. I like the reveal that we get closer to the end from Jod, and closer to the end of the book, when Hadrian does some Hadrian things, I think that it is cooler than Berenike. So, with that being said, from this point forward, I'm talking spoilers. I want to talk about it, and I struggle at forethought when it comes to the things that I'm going to say. So, this is that spoiler warning from here on out. I'm dropping names. I'm dropping places. We're talking specifics for Ashes of Man. I absolutely loved getting to know the Emperor and Nicephorus more in this book and learning the things that they know about the Quiet and whether or not Nicephorus believes in it or believes that Hadrian is what he is, and knowing that the Emperor does, and the way that he acts around Hadrian now or looks to him to accomplish things. And everything that's been building up to, learning more about that on Cartea, and that entire interaction was absolutely fantastic for me. The way that we find out about the lore alongside Hadrian, where it's not just exposition for exposition's sake, right? It's not just some character having an internal thought that doesn't really fit in place. Like, they should obviously know these things, but it's there for us as the reader to understand what's going on. But to have this slow drip trickle and have information in universe compartmentalized and then slowly be released to us the same way that it's released to Hadrian is a very nice touch, and it's something that I really, really enjoy about the entire series, and this book in particular. I absolutely loved the entire sequence that takes place on Ganelon, where Hadrian and Valka and the Dragon Slayers, with that little reveal, because I didn't personally know that the Ascalon is the spear used to kill a dragon. So that was cool information that was, hand fed to us. And then the entire sequence happening on Ganelon with Minos, Valka, Hadrian, being reintroduced to Urbane and all those magi and everything that's going on. I loved the whole sequence. The action was done very well. The catharsis of Valka finally getting her victory over Urbane, which I struggle with picking a word because they did kill two of the bodies that he is in this story. However, they do leave that open-ended. Even the characters in the story don't know whether we've actually seen the last of Urbane or if he was able to have his image sent to the Sojourner and then possibly somewhere else. So it'll be very interesting as I'm about to, for the first time, read Dregs of Empire and Disquiet Gods as we approach October and ultimately November for Shadows Upon Time. I'm very excited to learn if Urbane is actually done or if he is still out there. I think it's very interesting seeing the Emperor emulate what he thinks Hadrian would do. And I say it in that way because Reinhardt says that the Emperor is acting in a way that he thinks that Hadrian would, right? He is doing what he thinks Hadrian would do. But I do think that William cares about these people. And the mirror of Hadrian having lost his whole Red Company on UA, and then the Emperor being involved and a first-hand account of the things that are happening on saying these words in my head, it's so easy, but then I go to say them out loud and I struggle. Perfugium. You can see that he does care about his people, and he is sick and tired of seeing loss and failure everywhere that he turns. He's been on this planet for 2 years, and he just wants to save as many people as he can. Obviously, he gets too wrapped up in that. And the big picture is he is a symbol, as Hadrian tries to say to him, is more important. Even though we're talking about millions of people, at the scope that the Sullan Empire is operating, that is the few. We're talking about one planet of millions where there are billions of suns. There are trillions of people in the Sullan Empire that look to the Emperor. And he, I think, fails in his duty to get himself out, as admirable as it is, on what he's trying to accomplish before he leaves. He should have left sooner. And in a microcosm of the way that he's treated Hadrian up to this point, sending him on mission after mission in those tunnels, you can just feel the whole time that at one point, something's not going to go right. That being said, and I jumped over this a little bit to talk about that, but having Aloran be revealed as Prince Caim is fantastic. Having that character return to us and explaining how and why he was on Amesh in the way that he was a wonderful reveal, and goes to show that this universe is a living universe, that nothing is done unintentionally, and just like he says that every action is important, every character and everything that we learn is relevant. There isn't a lot of fluff in these books. In Ashes of Man, you start to see some of those earlier breadcrumbs or earlier seeds planted come to fruition. And it's really nice to go through that and have that character return in his the full version of himself. This was my reread of Ashes to Man. So I knew what was coming and I knew what was going to happen. But my memory version of it was in the tunnels. And it was when the bombs go off to seal off Medica, when they're trying to cut off the Hippodrome entrance that they originally entered into the catacombs to meet up with the Emperor, Hadrian, Valka, and the gang. And when Hadrian and Valka get separated by the falling rubble, my memory version was that Valka had been crushed at that time. So when I got to that point, again in the book, and I expected that to happen, and it didn't, I started to question everything. And unfortunately, I then had to relive that entire experience about when it actually happens. And I'm torn, right? Because it's not a real story, and it's not real life if everyone keeps getting away with it. We know that Hadrian does, because we know from the beginning that he's there at the end. He's writing the story. And Kingdoms of Death saw a mass culling of all of the characters, all but three, Lorien, Hadrian, and Valka. And in this book, to make the decision to kill off Valka is crazy work. I mean, there's 2 books after this that I haven't read. One hasn't come out yet. But Valka's been there since the beginning, so to see the way that Hadrian's character develops from this point forward, how he acts, and the way that the story plays out without having her there is going to be very interesting. And what I'm torn on is how she goes out. In Kingdoms of Death, Anue, Polino, Krim, Alara, Ilex, Corvo all go out with a bang. They all take out Viadon or Cielsen en masse. No one goes out shamefully or surprisingly. And I don't know how I feel about, Valka went out quite painlessly, and she wasn't alone, but she wasn't with any of her loved ones at the time. And we know what had been happening to those shuttles as the story had been progressing. So it's not surprising. It makes sense that that would happen. It is very unfortunate that it did. But Hadrian's reaction is so real. We've been in this character's head for 4 books previous to this, and knowing what he just went through. And you feel what he feels in that moment. And everything from when the screen goes black until he reaches out to Adavisa, and it is so visceral. It's incredible writing. And that leads me to Hadrian finally getting his powers back, and that surge of emotion, his fury, using the dark side of the Force with his anger to fuel himself, reaching out, using his power to focus on not himself, not his enemy, but the glass behind his enemy, and picking that one moment where that glass breaks and killing him. To me, the entire scene, the build-up, the imagery was better than Hadrian dodging the laser. It was more impactful to me because of what had just happened before it. The laser was incredible in Demon in White. I mean, that's some superhero shit, right? I'm not taking away from that, but this particular scene, if you were to mirror that book to this book, I would have to say that this scene was done better. It was absolutely incredible, and I loved it the second time through. Lastly, Lorien. Our boy comes in after Hadrian. You know what? In fact, I can't even talk about this without addressing what I think was going through the Emperor's head when he said she was only Tavrosi. Everything leading up to that point, you really believe that the Emperor does care that Valka was killed, that he cares for his cousin, that he cares for Hadrian, that he is grieving, that he's empathetic towards him. And you have to understand also, as a reader, looking at the emperor and who he is, or they are, or however, when he's the emperor versus himself and what have you, that he's so far outside the realm of normal relationships that it might not, it could go one of two ways, right? Either he didn't realize he was making a mistake when he said that, or he did it on purpose. I don't think he makes a mistake there, right? I think he either was ignorant when he did it because he's so far removed, or he did it on purpose expressly to elicit that reaction from Hadrian so that it could move forward somehow because of everyone having seen his powers in person when he broke the glass. I don't know what camp I'm in. I'd like to believe it was ignorant. Do I, though? Is that worse? I don't even know what I want it to be, honestly. Because it doesn't feel good to say that. When I said that out loud, it didn't feel good. But for him to do that, like, it's just so mean for him to do it on purpose, even though, like, there could be other machinations going on. I don't even know how I want it to be. So hopefully, reading some of this next stuff gives me a little more insight on it, but I'm not shocked that Hadrian did what he did. It's better than the Will Smith slap. That's for sure. More justified. So now that we've covered that, Lorien, lastly, dropping that little crumb, saying another time that he'll explain how he was able to rescue the lieutenant from the chantry to prove that Bourbon had something to do with the knife missile, or whoever had something to do with the Brethnak had something to do with there's a lot of B names, had something to do with the knife missile a couple books ago. And to immediately in this book get that foreshadowing, like not too far after, was very nice. And, you can kind of feel that something weird's going on. Hadrian does as well. So I'm was deciding whether I was going to read Dregs before or after Disquiet Gods, but Lorien has me so intrigued, and I'm so curious to know what exactly is going to happen to him because of this. I'm going to read Dregs first. I think it might be like a small Sun Eater palate cleanser because it's not going to be in Hadrian's point of view, I assume. But I'm going to Dregs first, and then I'll move on to Disquiet Gods for the first time, and I really can't wait. My reread has been all audiobook. I'm going to read Disquiet Gods and really take it in, be able to see those words, pause when I want to, reread some stuff without trying to have to navigate the reverse, forward, pause buttons and everything when I'm listening to it. But I cannot wait to get into Disquiet Gods. So, if you made it this far, what did you think of Ashes of Man? Did you think that the split hurt Ashes of Man, where I think it helped Kingdoms of Death? Or do you think that it didn't really matter? Where does Ashes of Man fall on your Sun Eater rankings up to this point? And am I in for a treat in Disquiet Gods? Because I see everyone talking about it, and I can't wait for Chapter 40. I'm on the internet. Let me know. Get in those comments. All right, everyone. Love you. Bye.